Noor was a young man living in a fantasy world, known for his strength and popularity in town. He worked a manual labor job, and even his boss was impressed by his dedication, never saying a bad word about him. One day, after collecting his daily wage, Noor heard a woman's scream for help coming from a nearby cave. Ignoring his boss's warning about the danger, Noor rushed to the cave. Inside, he found a girl trapped in magical barbed wire while an adventurers' party faced off against a giant demonic bull. Ever since he was a child, Noor had taken care of his mother and their home because his father never returned with the milk. He took it like a champ, managing the household. His mother was sick and mostly bedridden, so Noor made hot soup for her and told her he'd go hunt some rabbits for dinner. His mother cleaned his face and apologized for not being able to give him more, but Noor put on a brave face and assured her he needed nothing more. One night, Noor made a hearty rabbit stew for his mother, but when he returned to feed her, she had passed away. With no family left, Noor buried his mother outside their home. Deciding not to succumb to grief, he started living alone, tending to the garden, catching game, and taking care of the farm animals. He studied in his room after thoroughly cleaning it and trained his body by catching wild fish, carrying heavy load up the mountains, and eating lots of protein. One night, feeling lonely, Noor climbed onto a chair, took out an old dusty storybook, and started reading. The book took him back to a time when his family was whole, and his father would tell him tales of mighty adventurers who fought colossal dragons, learned magic from wizards, lifted curses in haunted forests, and battled armies of elves. These stories always fascinated him, especially his father's words about adventurers' duty to protect the weak and ensure they were never hurt. Inspired, Noor decided to become an adventurer. The next day, after tending to the animals, Noor left his home and headed toward the city to pursue his dream. He camped in a forest at night, and by morning, he arrived at the beautiful city of his kingdom. Entering through the giant main gate, Noor was amazed by the bustling markets, where people bought swords and fruits in the same place. He spotted a man with a sword and decided to follow him, leading him to the Adventurers Guild. Inside, Noor was surprised to find a big burly man at the reception instead of a thick furry girl. Disappointed, he told the man he wanted to be an adventurer. The man brushed him off, saying this wasn't a place for kids, and asked about his parents. Noor replied that his parents were dead, which caught the man's attention. The man advised Noor to first go to a training school, where he would need to pick a class and skills before he could become an adventurer. Excited, Noor headed to a school, aiming to become the strongest swordsman. He enrolled and started training in swordsmanship, but even after several weeks, while other students awakened their magical potential, Noor still showed no magical abilities. Months passed, and the instructor told him he didn't have the talent and was wasting his time. The instructor suggested Noor join a different school since he wasn't fit to be a swordsman. Determined, Noor found another school and decided to train as a warrior. He trained under a big, red-headed instructor, but after intense training, the redhead told him he had no talent for it, all he had learned was how to parry attacks. Noor tried several other schools, first as a hunter but got kicked out, then as a thief but was rejected due to a lack of talent, and even attempted to become a magician but failed. He finally tried to become a healer but failed at that too. Disappointed, he returned to the city. The burly man at the guild was shocked to learn that Noor hadn't learned a single thing despite spending months at every school. The man told Noor that to become an adventurer, even at the lowest rank, E rank, one needed at least one skill, which Noor lacked. Feeling defeated, Noor left the city and returned to his cottage in the woods. But he refused to give up. He created his own training setup and decided to perfect the one move he had learned, parrying and deflecting attacks. Noor trained rigorously, perfecting his parry technique day and night. After a year, he could parry 10 attacks at once. He continued training for 3 more years, eventually parrying 100 swords at once, but still, he gained no new skills. Undeterred, he kept training, even breaking 14 swords in the process. 14 years passed, and Noor realized he had trained every single day, now able to parry 1,000 swords at once without fail. Despite all his hard work, he still hadn't gained any new skills, but he decided to return to the Adventurers Guild once more. This time, he met a young girl who reviewed his skills and advised him to visit the training school again. Noor explained he had already been through them all, surprising the girl. She told him he lacked the skills to become an adventurer. Feeling disheartened, Noor was about to leave when the burly man recognized him. They sat down for a chat over some beer, and Noor shared his years of training. The man explained that adventurers have ranks from E to S, but even to become an E-rank adventurer, one needed at least one skill, which Noor didn't have. However, the burly man mentioned a lesser-known rank below E, F rank. F rank adventurers had limitations, like not being able to take on kill quests or work in forests outside the city. They could only take odd manual labor jobs within the city, a gig so unglamorous even a troll wouldn't take it. To the man's surprise, Nor immediately accepted and finally got his adventurer's license. Nor started doing odd jobs around the city, like carrying heavy loads and finding lost cats. He also took up nursing jobs, caring for elderly people and cooking for them. Despite all this, he continued training every night and found happiness in helping others as an adventurer. Now back to the present, Nor witnessed the giant bull attack the adventurers, killing the leader effortlessly. Nor quickly checked the leader, finding him dead. The bull continued its rampage, killing everyone in the area before turning its attention to the white-haired girl. Nor's instincts kicked in, and he threw a rock to distract the bull, leading it away. Realizing he couldn't outrun the monster, Nor turned around and parried the bull's attack. To his surprise, the parry was so strong it blasted the bull into the wall. The bull quickly recovered and lunged at Nor again, but Nor continued to parry its attacks. He knew that if he missed a single parry, he was done for. As his sword started chipping, the bull turned toward the girl and rushed at her. Nor used his feather step ability to speed up and deflect the attack, breaking his sword in the process. He remembered his father's words about adventurers defending the weak, even at the cost of their own lives. Standing his ground with a broken sword, Nor parried the monster's attack with all his might, deflecting the axe so forcefully that it bounced back and chopped the bull's head clean off. The girl was shocked as blood splattered everywhere, and the magical barbed wire disappeared from her body. Nor fell to the ground, looking at his shattered sword and realizing how close he had come to death. The girl thanked him for saving her life and asked his name, but Nor replied that his name wasn't worth remembering. He walked away, reflecting on how he almost got killed by a giant cow. Nor realized that he needed to train even more if he wanted to truly become an adventurer who could protect people. After he left, the dungeon filled with guards of the white-haired woman, who turned out to be Lynn Clay, a member of a noble family. Her personal guard arrived and found the dead Minotaur being examined by scientists, while Clay's guards lay dead, covered by white clothes. She apologized for not being there to protect them, but Lynn reassured her by saying it wasn't her fault. A little while later, a man named Dar arrived and asked if she was alright and what had happened. The news of the attack reached her brother Rain, who was shocked to learn that his sister had been attacked by such a monster. He asked Dar how a Minotaur ended up on the surface, as they usually stayed deep within dungeons. Dar bowed and explained that it was likely an assassination attempt. The ring Lin recently bought from a merchant had been tested by a magician and found to contain a mana stone with 90% purity. He believed the stone was cursed by the enemy kingdom of Deridas, known for practicing dark magic. Rain agreed, noting that Deridas's army had been causing trouble on the outskirts, and this brazen attack suggested they wanted war. Rain then asked Dar about the man who saved Lin's life. Dar replied that they knew nothing about him, only that he killed the Minotaur with a broadsword in a matter of minutes and left without giving his name. The next morning, Nor went to the guild as if nothing had happened, and the fatty quickly approached him, asking if he was okay. Nor seemed puzzled, so the fatty explained that a deadly monster had emerged in the caves near his construction site, and he was worried. Nor had no idea that the fatty was talking about the Minotaur he had killed, thinking it was just a low-level cow monster. The fatty told Nor he was lucky to have left beforehand because even a former A-ranked adventurer couldn't have handled such a strong beast. Nor wiped the dirt from his face, wondering what kind of monster could scare an A-ranked adventurer, and then thanked the gods he only faced a giant cow. Nor asked what happened to the monster, and the fatty said a mystery man had killed it with a single blow, shocking Nor, who wondered how strong that man must be. Later, the fatty paid him for the day and advised him to get a real job to earn more. Before Nor could respond, a hooded figure appeared behind him, calling out his name. He turned to find the white-haired girl he had saved the day before. She apologized for following him, explaining she used her long-distance detection skill to find him. When Nor asked if she learned it from the thief schools, she said she was from the magician branch but had skills in all 6 branches. Lin noticed they were drawing too much attention and asked if they could talk somewhere more private. Before Nor could answer, the fatty grabbed him, asking what he had done wrong. Nor insisted he did nothing wrong, while Lin deployed a soundproof barrier and asked him to come with her. They exited the building and walked through the streets to a desolate area. She thanked him for saving her life and those of many others. Nor, still unaware of his own strength, insisted he might have ruined her plans by interfering. She assured him that wasn't true and said she would have probably died without his help. Lin wanted to reward him, but Nor declined, saying her gratitude was enough. She insisted, offering her father's thanks and even land, but Nor kept refusing, baffling Lin, who couldn't understand why he would reject a noble's reward. She felt obligated to repay him and insisted she wouldn't leave until he accepted something. This reminded Nor of a time he did the same to one of the healing school instructors. He finally agreed to meet her father but refused any extravagant rewards, which made Lin happy. She used magic to conceal them as they walked back to her mansion. Upon arrival, Noor was stunned by the grandeur of the place. They walked past the guards and into the mansion, where they met Lin's personal guard, Ines, who looked suspiciously at Noor. Lin introduced Noor as the man who saved her life, and Ines softened, offering to take them to the Lord. As they walked through the gallery, Noor spotted a man in yellow armor, Gilbert, who pointed a lance at him, asking who he was. Ines told Gilbert to back off, explaining Noor was Lin's guest, but Gilbert mocked Noor for looking poor. Ines introduced Gilbert and asked him to join them, as she still didn't fully trust Noor. They waited outside the hall while Lin's father, Lord Clay, discussed the growing threat of war with his son, Ray. They remembered the last time they met the king of Deridas, who had insulted them and threatened war if they didn't grant access to all the dungeons in their kingdom. The door opened, and they entered the hall. Ines and Gilbert knelt before the Lord, but Noor, unfamiliar with noble etiquette, simply walked forward with Lin. She introduced him as the man who saved her life, and the Lord immediately stood up, thanking Noor for saving his daughter. Noor admitted he didn't know how to properly interact with nobles, but the Lord didn't mind, laughing and shaking his hand. The Lord offered Noor any reward he wanted, including land or half the treasure from the kingdom's oldest dungeons, which Ray advised against, as it was worth more than a small country's GDP. Noor refused, insisting he wanted nothing. The Lord was confused by Noor's refusal but eventually offered him a giant black sword, his former personal weapon. Ray was concerned, but the Lord assured him it should be used in battle, not kept as a decoration. Noor accepted the sword, feeling its weight and deciding to take it just to end the conversation and get back to work. The Lord asked him to swing the sword, and Noor did so with one hand, creating a powerful wind blast. The Lord was amazed, as Noor had swung a two-handed greatsword with one hand. The Lord suggested Noor train Lin, as times were getting dangerous, which made Lin smile. However, Noor declined, saying there was nothing he could teach her, and prepared to leave. As they walked through the gallery, Noor looked at the sword again, thinking it was perfect for scooping dirt from the drainage ditch. Just as he was about to leave, Gilbert stopped him, pointing a lance at his face, wanting to test if Noor was worthy of the sword. Noor sighed, wondering if he would ever be able to go back home. Gilbert leads Noor through a hallway, and Noor wonders where he's being taken because he just wants to go back home. To his surprise, Gilbert brings him to a training arena for a mock duel. Noor is shocked because he hasn't sparred hard with anyone since his training school days. Gilbert picks up a wooden pole for practice and reveals that he's quite famous in the capital. He then asks Noor to choose his weapon as well. Noor thinks this is an excellent chance to learn from a veteran, so he chooses a regular wooden sword. He doesn't think he'll be much of an opponent to Gilbert, but he's still planning to give it his all. Gilbert attacks first, thrusting his staff at Noor, who easily dodges his attacks. Noor can see how effortless and efficient Gilbert's moves are, revealing how much he has trained. But for some reason, Gilbert appears to be moving very slowly to Noor. Noor believes that Gilbert is just holding back his strength out of consideration for a noob like him. Noor calls a timeout and tells Gilbert that he doesn't need to hold back to such an extent. So, Gilbert decides to get serious. He launches his attacks at a much higher intensity this time, but it still isn't fast enough to overwhelm Noor, who finds openings in Gilbert's defense every time he misses an attack. On the other hand, Gilbert is frustrated that his strikes are not connecting with Noor, so he decides to use a trick attack where he changes his trajectory at the last moment. This forces Noor to jump, and then Gilbert uses it as a chance to strike him down just as he lands. However, despite all that, Noor is able to dodge his attack and asks Gilbert to increase the pace even more because he's comfortable with the current intensity. Gilbert was already using his full abilities, so hearing those words hurts his ego. Noor also finally realizes that he might actually be stronger than Gilbert. But then, suddenly, the elite guard uses his special move on Noor. The attack reaches dangerously close, but when the dust settles, Noor is not in front of Gilbert. He had dodged the attack and moved to the side. After seeing the destructive power of Gilbert's attack, Noor immediately declares that he no longer wishes to fight. Noor leaves the palace, but his skill has caused an uproar among other knights, who can't believe that he could dodge their captain's special attack. Some of them believe that Noor only survived because Gilbert was holding a practice spear, otherwise, a genius like him could easily defeat anyone he wanted to. Hearing those words takes the depressed Gilbert down memory lane. He was always talented with a spear and traveled all around the kingdom seeking powerful people and defeating them. There was no one who could even give him a proper challenge, and Gilbert got bored. He went to the capital and joined the knights so that he could fight monsters, since they were stronger than humans. However, even monsters were no match for his strength and skill, and his boredom persisted. Then one day, as he was lazing around, the master of the sword school came to see him because he was the one who trained him in the early days. Gilbert ranted about how boring it is to be so strong and wished there were more people as strong as the master so that he could have fun fighting them. The master only told him that someday someone who will surpass him will emerge among his students, and Gilbert hoped that the person makes his appearance while he is still alive, because that may be the only way to relieve his boredom. Now, as Gilbert thinks about the man who killed a minotaur with a single strike, his mind is full of conflicting thoughts. He knew from the first moment that Nor was an interesting person, but he couldn't sense anything remarkable about his strength. However, when they sparred, he found that Nor was much stronger than he looked. When Nor told him to go even faster, he used his special attack on him that was even faster than the speed of sound, knowing full well that no human can survive it. When Nor dodged the attack, Gilbert felt defeated. To top that off, Nor ended the fight. Gilbert believes that Nor did so to not embarrass him in front of his troops, and before going, he told him that he was looking forward to their next meeting, which was Nor's way of telling him to get stronger. Now Gilbert thinks that he has finally found someone who can make his life a bit more fun. On the other hand, Nor has no idea how highly Gilbert rates him. He used his body strengthening and feather step skills earlier to evade Gilbert's ultimate attack at the last moment, and if he was only 1 moment late, he would have died. Nor thinks Gilbert adjusted the speed of his attack on purpose so that he could only barely dodge it, and he is grateful to him for showing him that he still needs a lot of training. The next day, Nor begins cleaning drains using the treasured sword he received from the king, and he is absolutely stunned by how well the sword performs. Later, he is sitting in the forest because his job at the construction site was suspended because of the Minotaur incident. He wonders how he can kill time until the job is available again, and he also wants to put the huge sword to good use. He thinks that it may make a splendid or a pizza shovel or even a grill plate, but he lacks the resources to get other items needed to start those businesses. He tries using his fire magic and thinks that it is too weak to be any good for starting a barbecue. He hears footsteps behind him and turns around to find Lin, who has come looking for him specifically. Nor asks how he can help her, and Lin requests him to let her be his apprentice so that she can learn from him while serving him. She is eager to serve him with anything he wants, but Nor refuses, saying that he cannot teach her anything and he is self-sufficient in everything. Lin tries offering him a monetary reward for his training, but Nor clearly tells her that he wants nothing. She keeps insisting that she will be helpful to him, and Nor fails to clearly get his point through to her. To prove that she is qualified to learn from him, Lin decides to show off her magic power. She creates icicle lances and shoots them towards herself and then burns them off using a powerful fire spell. Next, she cuts down a huge tree with a small dagger using another skill and then uses a magic sword skill to blast a tree behind Nor. She is confident that Nor will accept her as his apprentice with this display, but he still refuses to do so. Nor has now realized that Lin is rating him too high and wonders how he can convince her that he is nothing compared to her. He decides to show her his skill and creates a tiny fireball to prove to her that he is a loser. Lin is shocked to see it. She begins walking home and thinks about the tale of the talentless boy that all the teachers used to narrate. At that time, Lin thought it was just a cautionary tale because she didn't think that any 12-year-old boy could endure the harsh training of all 6 schools for the full term when even seasoned warriors found it hard to stay there for so long. One day, the strongest magician who runs the magic school showed her his tiny fire skill and then increased its size to show off his mastery. The magician said that it takes decades of practice to increase the size of the tiny flame skill. That is why when Nor showed Lin his tiny fire today, she was left speechless because it was much larger than the strongest magician in the world. He told her that this is all he can manage and his skill in other branches is at the same level as well. Only Lin knew that the size of the small fire spoke volumes about Nor's ability, and she concluded that he was a peerless master in the other branches as well. Now she is ashamed that she was proud of her high-level skills that she just learned recently. She thinks that despite being exponentially stronger than her, Nor never boasts about his power and he does even the most mundane tasks to help others. She thinks that Nor's mind and character are as strong as his body and that he cannot be fazed by anything. As the princess, she will have to lead the kingdom alongside her brother one day, and for that, she needs to be strong. She wants to learn how to become strong from Nor, and for that reason, she once again reaches out to him just as he is coming out of a restaurant after having dinner. Lin tells him that she fully understands how immature and vain she was and now she wants to learn from him even more. She believes that his strength will become the foundation of their kingdom's peace and prosperity, so she has accepted him as her master. However, Nor is deeply troubled by this and just wants to go home. Meanwhile, Lin's older brother, Rain, is in his office, scratching his head and wondering why their dad gave the legendary black sword to a total stranger. He remembers the epic adventure his father had when he was younger, exploring a dungeon with the masters of the 6 job schools. After a long and grueling journey, he found the black blade, which quickly became their most prized possession. The sword was made of a mysterious metal tougher than anything else they knew, it was practically indestructible. Neither physical attacks nor magic could scratch it. However, everyone was puzzled as to why such a powerful sword was in terrible condition. Rain thinks that the black blade is worth more than any treasure they have. It's not something his father would just hand over to a random person unless he saw something special in him. Rain knows his dad can sense the looming dangers facing their kingdom, and maybe he gave the sword to Nor, hoping he'd be their ace in the hole when the time came. Even Rain believes Nor isn't just an ordinary guy and could be their secret weapon. Meanwhile, Nor is in the city, munching on delicious street food with Lin by his side. She's fully embraced her role as his apprentice, but Nor feels he's not worthy of being her teacher. He figures that if they head to the guild, she'll see how pathetic he is and maybe leave him alone. When they reach the guild, the chubby receptionist immediately asks Nor why he's hanging out with a princess. Nor says it's complicated, so the receptionist decides not to talk about that, even though Nor really wants some advice from him. The receptionist then asks what they wanted. Nor says they need a commission for 2 people since Lin is a B-rank adventurer. Fatty suggests they hunt goblins outside the city. Nor is stunned because he's only heard stories about real adventurers using goblins as practice dummies. He can't believe he's finally getting the chance to do the same. But then, he realizes he's relying on Lin's high rank, even though he just wanted her to leave him alone. Lin catches him staring at her, and Nor feels guilty, thinking she sees how greedy and shameless he is. She asks if anything's wrong, and he asks if she's okay with the arrangement since he's relying on her rank. Lin says it's fine and tells Nor he can use anything that belongs to her. Nor feels a bit pathetic but doesn't care because he's finally living his dream. Nor marches out of the guild with determination, but Fatty calls him back because he doesn't even know where the goblins are. Fatty completes the paperwork and warns Nor not to push his luck. Even though goblins are low-level monsters, they can still be dangerous. He points out their location on a map and mentions that their numbers have been dwindling lately. He tells Nor not to forget to collect the right ears of the goblins he kills in order to receive a reward and sends him off. Nor and Lin enter the forest of monsters, and Nor is surprised because he's never seen this part of the forest before. He tells Lin about the different trees in the south where he comes from, and she gives him a quick lesson on the ecosystem. Nor then asks about goblins, and Lin explains that they are small monsters that prey on fruits and small creatures. Their numbers can grow rapidly, and if they exceed a certain limit, they start attacking human settlements due to a lack of food. That's why the Adventurer Guild sends people to keep their numbers low but doesn't allow them to wipe out goblins completely, as they play a role in the ecosystem too. Nor is impressed by Lin's knowledge and feels like he has even less to teach her. As they venture deeper into the forest, Lin's detection skills don't find any trace of goblins. However, she senses something at a distance and tells Nor they should check it out. The deeper they go, the darker it becomes, and the mist thickens. When they reach the spot Lin sensed, they find nothing. She notes that the presence she felt just vanished, but Nor notices something unusual. A half-eaten goblin body floating in the air suddenly falls to the ground. Lin casts a spell, revealing a huge green monster with a red crystal on its forehead. Nor is shocked and jokingly asks if it's the Hulk's cousin, while Lin stutters and tries to say it's a goblin emperor. Nor freaks out, thinking this is the normal size of a goblin and real adventurers must be insanely tough to use them as practice targets. The Goblin Emperor starts uprooting trees with its bare hands and roars, terrifying Lin. She knows even a Goblin King is a Calamity-class monster, and this Goblin Emperor is even stronger. She also knows that Goblin Emperors aren't natural monsters but are created through forbidden experiments. Nor, misunderstanding her fear, thinks she must never have fought monsters before and assures her that their opponent is just a goblin. His words give Lin courage, making her think Nor knew about this powerful monster being here and that's why he was so excited to come. She takes her stance beside him, ready to defeat the Goblin Emperor with her teacher. The Goblin Emperor charges at them, wielding tree trunks like weapons. Nor blocks and parries the attacks but is soon overwhelmed by the brute force. Lin tries to hit it with wind and ice magic, but the Goblin Emperor is surprisingly agile and dodges her spells. It throws a tree at Lin, but Nor parries it and asks if she's okay. She tells him to focus on the goblin, which keeps throwing trees. Nor continues to parry them, but he's getting tired. Lin notices that the Goblin Emperor's injuries are healing unnaturally fast and believes the red crystal on its forehead is the reason. Suddenly, the Goblin Emperor throws 3 trees at once. Nor panics, knowing he can't parry them all, but Lin saves the day with a powerful wind spell that blows the trees away. Her attack damages the Goblin Emperor, but it heals instantly. Lin realizes they need to remove the crystal to stop its healing. Nor doubts they can manage that, but then he gets an idea. He asks Lin to hit his back with the wind spell she just used. She warns him it's strong enough to tear down castle walls, but Nor plans to use the black blade to take the blow and propel himself towards the Goblin Emperor faster than it can react. Lin reluctantly agrees and blasts Nor's back, sending him speeding forward. Despite using his physical enhancement skill, he breaks a bone but quickly heals himself. He dodges a tree thrown by the Goblin Emperor and leaps high, aiming for the crystal. His powerful strike cuts through the tree and hits the crystal, popping it out of the goblin's forehead. The goblin screeches in pain as Nor is sent rolling on the ground. He gets up and sees the goblin writhing in agony. Lin retrieves the crystal and Nor asks if she can finish off the goblin. She agrees, and Nor, feeling bad for the suffering creature, asks her to make it quick and painless. Ironically, she proceeds to burn the Goblin Emperor to death. Nor feels sorry for the monster and decides he's had enough goblin hunting for a while. He thinks he's still too weak to face even low-level monsters and needs to train harder before returning to the forest. Later, Rain's secret agents bring the crystal to him and report the Goblin Emperor incident. Just by looking at the crystal's purity and size, Rain knows it's the work of the Magic Empire. He also learns that Lin and Nor defeated the powerful monster with just a few scratches. However, he's most shocked by how such a huge monster could enter their kingdom without the guards and Secret Service noticing. He orders his agents to keep an eye out for such irregularities in nearby cities and dismisses them. Meanwhile, Nor and Lin report to Fatty at the guild. Fatty asks Nor how he feels after his first monster hunt. Still convinced he just fought a regular goblin, Nor says it was harder than expected and they only won thanks to Lin. Lin blushes at his modesty, and Fatty assumes Nor watched from behind while the princess fought. He gets suspicious when he hears about the red crystal and asks if it was really a goblin. Nor looks to Lin for confirmation, and she, playing along, says that since her teacher called it a goblin, that's what it was. Fatty, satisfied with the explanation, asks them for proof of their kill. Nor and Lin suddenly realize they forgot to collect the goblin's ear before burning it to ashes. Not long after, Rain starts getting reports of strange things happening in nearby cities and villages. People are hearing odd noises at night, animals are spooked and rushing back from the forest, and there's been a rise in missing pets. It seems like the forests have gone eerily quiet. Rain suspects this could mean unnatural monsters have sneaked into their kingdom. He quickly orders his men to send search parties to these areas and have everyone with detection spells on alert. He also calls for the 6 masters of each school for potential backup. Once his subordinates leave, Rain vents his frustration, throwing papers into the air and wondering if the Magic Empire is so desperate for their dungeons that they're willing to go to these lengths. Meanwhile, Nor and Lin are enjoying some street food with the money they earned. Fatty had given them the reward out of his own pocket since it was Nor's first conquest mission, despite them lacking proof of the kill. After they finish eating, Lin tells Nor she's heading home, and he feels relieved to finally get some peace. Just then, Rain arrives, looking for his sister. He asks Nor to visit a mountain town the next morning, promising a good payment and saying Lin will also be there. Although Rain doesn't disclose the exact purpose, Nor accepts, sensing Rain's sincerity. The next day, Nor rides a carriage for the first time, and he's thrilled by the experience. Lin, on the other hand, seems gloomy. Nor, distracted by the beautiful scenery, asks if she's not enjoying the view. As they ride, he daydreams about becoming a proper adventurer and traveling. Lin suddenly apologizes for her brother involving Nor, but he reassures her, saying he's getting paid, which only dampens her mood further. Earlier that morning, Rain had explained their mission: go to the town of Tauros and, if nothing happens, continue to the neighboring country, the Holy Kingdom of Mythira. He told Nor to consider it a paid vacation if all stayed calm. Lin, thinking back, hopes nothing bad happens. Her bodyguard, Ines, tries to comfort her, saying she's there to protect her. In truth, Rain had given Ines a top-secret mission: if the kingdom fell into danger, she was to take Lin and seek refuge in Mythira. Ines was shocked and asked if Lin knew about this. Rain admitted he hadn't told her, fearing she'd oppose the plan. He was deeply worried about Lin's safety and trusted only Ines with this. As they take a break, Ines apologizes to Nor for dragging him into this. She assures him of his safety, but he jokes about being good at running away. Ines insists there's no need for that, showing her ability to create a holy shield. Nor is impressed, recalling how Lin mentioned Ines's skills rival those of Gilbert, a warrior known for defeating dragons. Nor feels inadequate, struggling with just a goblin, but he praises Ines's talent, which brings back memories for her. Ines grew up in an orphanage and discovered her powers when she accidentally cut a friend's finger with them. The caretakers called in experts, who declared her abilities a divine gift, capable of cutting or shielding anything. The redhead warrior, who became her master and adoptive father, trained her. Despite this, Ines distanced herself from the other children, fearing she might hurt them. But meeting Noor, whose name she had heard from her father, made her curious and a little jealous, as her father admired him. Since then, her jealousy had grown, and she struggled to overcome it, wanting to protect Lin without any weakness. Suddenly, Noor spots something moving through the wheat fields, leaving a strange trail. Lin quickly stops the carriage and uses her magic to reveal a giant frog-bat hybrid monster. At the same time, numerous monsters attack the capital. Rain orders warriors, swordsmen, and hunters to defend, while thieves help evacuate civilians. King Clay recalls a warning from Emperor Daridas, who had threatened consequences if they didn't accept his conditions. Rain suspects Daridas is behind the attack and fears worse might come. The 6 masters are spread thin, battling monsters across the kingdom. The redhead warrior faces 3 goblin emperors in the forest, the swordmaster hunts lizard monsters in the city, and other experts are also engaged. Back in the fields, as Lin reveals the monster, it attacks a girl standing nearby. Noor rushes to protect her, parrying the dragon strikes with his black blade. Ines remarks that the girl appeared just as Lin broke the concealment spell around the dragon, leading Lin to suspect the girl is a demon with the power to control monsters. Lin remembers her brother's tales about demons who look like humans but are closer to monsters in nature. These demons, descendants of a race that once destroyed a kingdom, might still hold grudges against humans. Ines believes the girl is a demon who brought the dragon. Lin's spell must have startled her, weakening her control over the dragon, which then attacked her. Ines thinks they shouldn't help the girl, but Noor instinctively rushes to her aid. Watching him fight the dragon, Ines wonders what he's thinking. Lin insists they help Noor, but Ines blocks her, saying it's too late. Noor notices the dragon is slower and weaker than the goblin he fought. He tries to buy time, hoping Lin will step in. The dragon suddenly breathes poison, and Noor decides to parry it to protect the girl, a mistake that exposes him to the deadly toxin. He starts vomiting black blood and bleeding from his eyes, realizing the poison is taking effect. He falls, losing consciousness. As Lin tries to reach him, Ines stops her with a barrier, warning her that the dragon is too dangerous. She combines her shields to protect Lin, urging her to prioritize survival. Lin attempts to use purification magic to save Noor, but it's not strong enough. As the poison spreads, Ines apologizes to Noor for not being able to save him. Just then, the dragon's claw hits the barrier, and the poison cloud disperses. Noor is still fighting the dragon, despite the severe poisoning. Ines realizes why the redhead warrior trusted Noor in difficult situations. He's the ultimate shield, willing to protect others at any cost. However, she fears he won't survive. Noor continues to parry the dragon's attacks, even as he weakens. He puts up a brave fight, blocking an attack before collapsing. Looking at his poisoned blood-stained hand, he thinks he'll somehow manage to pull through this time. The story will be continued in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.